Hey there, and welcome back to another Illumination video. And today, I want to talk about the upcoming Super Mario movie, and what a disaster this thing has the potential of being. Now, I know I'm a little late to the party in this regard. I mean, when it was first announced, a lot of people were already giving this thing the side eye, and that was years ago. Video game movies are often complete and utter failures for a number of reasons, but more often than anything, a story that often fits a game makes a much less impressive film adaptation. Plus a bunch of other different factors. But really, what I find is that most often, it's the writing and sometimes the acting that lets these things down, whilst the effects and the action and the soundtrack, they're often the reason that people care at all. They're the silver lining on the stormy cloud of terrible filmmaking. But I think that more and more in the time since this has been announced, people have started to come around to the idea of video game films. After all, the Sonic the Hedgehog films have done pretty well for themselves. So the idea of a Mario film being good in this day and age no longer seems so ridiculous. But despite this newfound faith, I'm still not really all that sure that this film's going to be much of a success. In fact, I'm actually quite worried about this whole thing. I don't want it to fail. Mario's awesome. Like millions of other people, I have a shit ton of childhood nostalgia wrapped up in this character and in the world that Nintendo made. I just don't want them to massacre my boy. But I feel like it's a very likely scenario, and there are a couple of reasons why. But before we go any further, you might have noticed that, hey, this video doesn't have Mario clips. Yeah, well, Nintendo copyrights at the drop of a hat, so no chance there, mate. I'm going to be using Illumination clips, I think. And one of my big fears and problems is the casting. The casting. Look, coming into this, when the film was announced, I kind of assumed that certain characters that have really iconic voices, like Mario, wouldn't be recast. Because regardless of whether you like his voice or not, and I know there are some that find his voice somewhat problematic as it's a major stereotype, but at this point, it's part and parcel of Mario. It has such a deep association with the character. It's part of his core characterization. Would that be able to be changed? Of course, there are ways around it. The dude's meant to be Italian-American, right? So I guess you could cast an actual Italian-American actor with a really cool sounding voice. That might work. It would still feel a lot different, but you could see where they're coming from. Or maybe they want to go mega authentic and cast an Italian actor for the role, and that would be okay as well. He still has the accent in a way, but it's much less of a stereotypical one. It's an actual authentic voice performance. And I think there'd be no shame in taking that approach either. And I think if I had any say, that second choice is probably the direction I would have taken things in. But alas, that is not what happened. For some reason, Chris Pratt was inexplicably cast, alongside a number of other baffling choices for some of the other characters. And I really don't get why studios do this. Like, surely there was a different big name actor that's just looking for a cheap payday that would feel a little bit more like Mario. And I get that it's probably not fair to judge without actually seeing the film, but this just seems like such a tremendous miscast that it makes my head spin. Like, I don't even know what to expect. Is he going to do a cringy accent? Just use his own tone of voice and his own way of speaking? Is he going to sound like Star-Lord?
This is my voice.
Because that very much sounds like a disaster in the making any way you slice it. It feels like the potential for premium cringe is off the charts. Like, I'm happy to be wrong, but that's just the perspective I'm getting at the moment. And as for the rest of the cast, sure. For the most part, I see where they're coming from. Peach, Luigi, Toad. Yeah, I know the actors, but not really well enough to know if they're going to be a good fit or not. For those characters, I'm pretty happy to just wait and see what happens there. And then there's Jack Black for Bowser. And on one hand, I enjoy his work in Shark Tale and Kung Fu Panda. He's perfected the voice of the kind of dorky tryhard with a sweet temperament. Does that fit Bowser? Not really, I would argue, but at the same time, I guess with the right script it could work out well. But let's just remind ourselves, video game films don't usually have very good scripts, so we'll see how that goes. And then this brings us to Donkey Kong. Ugh. Seth Rogen. And look, I don't hate Seth Rogen. I'm not a hater of Seth Rogen. It just seems like this is gonna be shit. Literal shit. I can already hear his goddamn chuckle laugh thing he does echoing in my head. Seeing that come out of Donkey Kong's mouth is going to kill my childhood completely and utterly. This has got to be the worst case scenario casting for me. Plus, those three are pretty big names. Plus a few others that have gotten a bit of attention and prestige in recent years. So it feels like this is going to start to bloat out the budget. So either they're going to need to spend more money on this thing and increase the total budget, or they have to cut corners in other aspects of the film. And either way, that feels like a lose-lose. If you cut corners, they afford the big names. If you cut corners to afford the big names, the film won't be as good. It's as simple as that. And if you increase the budget, if you bloat out that budget, It's just going to be more money that you need to hope to regain at the box office. And considering the last Mario film was a commercial disaster, a box office bomb, I think this is a pretty big ask, even if we have seen other video game properties have successful adaptations in recent years. It just increases the potential for failure exponentially. And that's just the risk of the casting, and the budget problems that those pose. It has nothing to do with the creative side, which I'd argue is the second big risk factor. That second reason that this franchise has a huge potential to fail hard. Simply put, if the film itself sucks, after that initial surge of tickets, nobody's going to want to see it. Justice League syndrome. And I'm trying to find the best way to put this, but I don't think Mario really has a very hugely deep story. His most famous adventures revolve around rescuing Princess Peach from the creepy clutches of Bowser. And yes, there are other stories you can tell, but I feel like for your first foray into the world of film in over 20 years, you'd want your franchise to sort of stay true to its origin, much like Sonic sort of stayed true to his origin in his film. Yeah, some things were swapped up and they added some much needed elements to ground the story, like the cop, but it still felt like Sonic and the world of Sonic the Hedgehog. But the question is, are they going to do that with Mario? Are they able to do that with Mario? What direction are they going to take this? How are they going to tell their story? Do they acknowledge how weird and wacky the world they inhabit is? Do they try to partially set it in the real world and they go down pipes into the Mushroom Kingdom? And honestly, that just sounds like the worst idea possible. If you're going to make this thing, just go all in and have them live in the Mushroom Kingdom, play up the weirdness, the meta elements, the video game stuff. I think that's what I'd really like to see in a Mario film. And honestly, it makes me kind of salty that Wreck-It Ralph exists, because honestly, that whole concept would have been perfect for Mario and Donkey Kong or Bowser. A team-up film. Like, I get that it spoofs that, but it would have been so great if Nintendo got involved with that. Mario is Felix, Ralph is Donkey Kong. The space world could be Metroid. The Cupcake Racer game, I don't know, Mario Kart, have cameos from all these different Nintendo franchises. Man, that would have been something. And really, I think this is where the film has the potential to fall in a massive hole. The story and the script. And I really do hope that's not the case, but I've been burnt so many times, I just don't have any faith left. But even then, we're a long way off release and we don't really know all that much about it. But I still can't help but worry that I'm going to get my hopes up and be let down again and again. They've already made a few questionable decisions by my esteem, so I wouldn't put it past them to make a few more. Sometimes that just happens. But anyway, with all that being said, these are just my opinions and now I'd like to hear yours. What do you think the Mario movie is going to be like? You think it'll do well? Is it going to suck? What are your opinions on the casting? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe and let me know.